Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I was at work with some of my pals and we were talking about the question, is there a difference between different DAWs and how they sum things together? And I just thought, well, we could check this with a null test. And I was like, okay, let's do it. But we didn't have time at work because I had stuff to do. So I thought, while I'm here at home, let me do a null test of some things and see if there's any difference between the way DAWs sound. So my first idea was just to mix some things together, but one of my colleagues said, why don't you start with just oscillator tones, purest you can get, combine a few of those together and see what happens. Then you could move on to just combining some more complex material to see if that has an impact. And then finally, use exactly the same plugins like an EQ and an aux and send it all the same, have the same settings, and see if that makes a difference as well, whether there's something in the way the auxes work. So I'm going to try that today, make the tests, and then we're going to listen back and see if there's any difference between these DAWs and the way they sum together. Check out mattchapmanaudio.com for mixing and mastering in the store. Okay, so here's my test. I did all the files, and what we've got here is a group of sine waves, the same thing, so it's 100 hertz, 200 hertz, 300 hertz, something like that, and each one goes down by 5 dB. I just summed them together. I had a fade at the start and a fade at the end, and so that was just kind of like the purest one. And I used the same audio files. You can see here, it was the same audio files went into every DAW session, or just summed and exported out. So that was the first one. The second one was just two samples, drum sample and a bass sample, and summed them together. And also with this one, the files were turned down on the mixer by 6 dB. So there was a little bit of the DAW had to do something, you know. Next, I did a little bit of EQ on both of the things and then just summed them together. But I did exactly the same EQ. And this final one was sending each of the stems out to an aux at full volume, so just like default volume, what comes out of the aux, then them being compressed by the Pro C3, and it was the same setting every single time. So I just pasted that same setting on. This is my test, and then my plan is just to null test, you know, each of them, see what's up, and see if there's any differences. So let's give it a try and see what we find. All right. Okay, so when we compare Logic and Ableton, the sine waves are completely nulling, like there's no difference between them whatsoever. But when we go to this one, there is the tiniest bit of difference, which is a surprise to me. That's a surprise. So I wonder what might be causing that. Maybe there was some sample rate conversion, because I was expecting these to be completely the same, but there's an actual, like I can hear just a touch of difference in the drums and the bass. That's really interesting. Okay, cool. All right, let's listen to the one with EQ. Okay, it's pretty much exactly the same. And then one with the aux. Okay, so you can actually hear the way it started with the transient is different. So one of them was better with the transient, one of them was worse. You can hear that little click at the beginning, so there is a difference. And then as it gets further towards the end of the file, I swear I'm hearing more differences, which is mad. I thought this was just going to be blank the whole time, if I'm honest with you. But maybe there was something with like Ableton, when it imports, you have to turn off warp setting. So maybe it does something with that. But I've made sure warp was off. There's definitely no warping because it's so close. So it can't be that. But there is a noticeable tiny bit of difference there. That's wild. All right, let's try now. I put the trim on Pro Tools, so Pro Tools is flipped, but Logic, and we'll see if there's a difference between these two. Yeah, the sine wave is completely nulled. Yeah, absolutely no difference between those sine waves. That's cool. Pro Tools and Logic, see if there's a difference. Let me just try Ableton versus Pro Tools. The Null Test is completely blank, that's fair enough. And with the drums. Okay, what's interesting there is for each bass part, so I only had one bass part, so I had to copy it across. But where I've copied a file across, there is a difference. Like there's totally a difference in that second bass. That's really strange. If you compare Logic and Ableton again, you can hear a drum. Yeah, and when you copy a file, there's a difference. That's wild. I don't know. I don't think I've made a mistake. That's wild. Okay, so yeah, something's different about copying over those things because there's a difference between all of them. Kind of got it wrong 3 times, so that's wild. About this end one. Oh yeah, let's try it on Pro Tools. Okay, once you start adding up, there's bigger differences between Logic and Pro Tools. That's really interesting. We've got the click at the start. I wonder if we compare these two, if there's a click. Nah, so Logic's doing something at the beginning. Let's have a look at that. You can see that Ableton and Pro Tools, they both start exactly the same from the bounce, but you can see that Logic is slightly different at the beginning. I think it's actually a little bit smoother from Logic's export, but you can see this reaches like the gain that we need straight away. Yeah, you can see this one has got louder a bit quicker, but Logic seems to have faded in the bounce just a tiny bit. Yeah, there is differences, just slight differences between those waveforms. They're microscopic, but wow. Okay, I don't know what to make of that. Let me try putting the trim just on Logic in case it's Pro Tools doing something where the one that's flipped causes a problem or something like that. Let me try that. No, still a tiny difference. Okay, let me try another thing then. Let me just flip one of these. So let's say I flip this. Okay, so they have been through an inversion process, but these should now cancel out still. No, there's definitely differences. The EQ doesn't seem to make much difference, but when we go to an aux, there's definitely a difference between them. Yeah, let's try Pro Tools versus Ableton. Okay, so weirdly, I am thinking that Logic has a more distinct sound. Like you can hear something on the Logic file that's different to Ableton and Pro Tools. I'm not sure why in every single one of them, the second bass is different to the first bass. But that was interesting because I had to copy a file across and that made a difference. Woo! I'd love to hear people's thoughts about this and whether maybe I made a mistake. So some of the things that I think could be up or could be causing a little bit of something here is maybe there's something with sample rate conversion. So maybe, but I tried to keep all of these 48K so that it didn't convert at all, but maybe some of them had to be converted or something. I'm not sure, that might be a factor, but if that was, I wouldn't have heard such uniform differences. It's like the same differences every time. So I don't think it's that. What's interesting is when it came to just putting in audio files, summing them together and bouncing them out, pure sine waves, there is no difference whatsoever if you don't adjust the gain. But on this second example, I did turn each file down on the mixer 6 dB down. So that could be the factor that's causing a little bit of change. When I added an EQ onto each of those, I didn't really hear a noticeable difference. When I added a aux, I did definitely hear a difference between the files. And then on top of that, when I copied a file, so it was just one single drum loop, I took a photo, it was one single drum loop, but I did have to copy this over to work in time. But I made sure it was in bar and beats at 172, the same every time, but it definitely did copy the file over. And that second bass, you always hear that that's different. So weirdly, making a copy seemed to have a difference, but that's baffling to me. Yeah, and we can see it's the same here, -6 dB. dB, full send, and that caused a bit of a difference in the way that auxes worked. Same here, -6 dB, and then 0 send, because that's +6 if you go higher than that, so that's cool. And then the same on Pro Tools, you can see just full send at 0 without going into like the pluses. So it should be all the same, but there's totally some differences there, which is wild. So maybe there's room for further investigation here to see if DAWs actually do sound different, because from this little quick test, my answer is maybe they do, because they don't come back completely nulled. So yeah, if anybody knows of any better studies where people took a bit more time, or if you want me to go deep and like prepare a really big investigation into this with like controlling the variables a bit more and making sure everything's perfect, let me know. But initially I thought people were like hearing things and they were like, ah, yeah, DAWs sound different. But it turns out they kind of do, just a little bit, maybe. All right, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if I caused any errors that you're like, Matt, you didn't think about this. Cool. That's it for this video. Till next time. Nice one.